Assalamu alaikum everyone, hope you're doing well and best wishes for your examination. So this is a class for all the graphs of like IGCSE and O'Level Economics. The first graph that you must know is production possibility curve. Production possibility curve is a graph which shows different combinations of two products that can be produced with the given resources and time. And production possibility curve looks like this. So it shows that the total boundary of resources is OAB. So this is the total amount of resources OAB, and then there are certain things that you must know, that if there is any point inside the PPC, it shows unemployment of resources. For example, point C inside the PPC shows unemployment, and if we show a point along the PPC, it shows full employment, and point E is non-attainable, that is beyond the boundary of resources. Okay, so the next thing that you must know, that if there is increase in technology, improvement in technology, increase in natural resources, discovery of new natural resources, or there may be increase in investment, or there may be increase in amount of labor force, or their like training and education, then graph will shift to the right from AB to AB1. And on the other hand, if there is like decrease in natural resources are depleted, or there may be technology may be obsoleted, or there may be decrease in labor force, or decrease in education and training of the labor force, then production possibility curve will shift inward to the left like this, from AB to CD, for example. Now moving to the demand curve. Demand is the willingness and ability of the consumers to buy a certain product at a given market price, and demand curve looks like this. It is negatively sloped, showing negative relationship between price and quantity demand. So when price is $10, for example, quantity demand is 100. If price falls to $8, quantity demand will rise to 120 units. So there is a negative or inverse relationship between price and quantity demand. So from A to B, there is movement along the curve whenever there is change in price. So if we move from A to B, where price falls and quantity demand increases, it is called extension. And if we move back from point B to A, that is called contraction in demand. And supply curve, supply is the availability of a product in the market for sale at given market price, and it is positively related because when price increases, quantity supply will also rise. For example, price is $10, quantity is 100 units. If price increases to $12, quantity supply will increase to, let's say, 120. So both are increasing at the same time, so the link is positive, therefore the graph it looks like positively sloped. And again, if there is movement along the curve from point A to B, that is called extension in quantity supply, and if there is movement from B to A, that is contraction in quantity supply. Extension and contraction is caused by the change in price. Now moving to the shift in demand curve, like if there is increase in demand or decrease in demand, demand curve will shift accordingly. So initially demand curve is this, and if there is increase in demand due to non-price factors such as rise in income, rise in taste and fashion, weather, change in population, advertisement, etc., then demand curve will shift to the right if there is rise in demand. And if non-price factors decrease demand, then demand curve will shift to the left from D to D2. So this shows fall in demand, and it is caused by like non-price factors. And non-price factors are income, taste and fashion, weather, population, advertisement, etc. So now coming to the supply curve, if there is increase in supply, then supply curve shifts to the right, and from S to S1. Right, so this is rise in supply, and rise in supply is also caused by non-price factors, change in non-price factors such as cost of production, indirect taxes, subsidies, and government policies, as well as climate change. So if there is decrease in price supply, then supply curve will shift to the left from S to S2, and this shows fall in supply. Now moving to the equilibrium position. Equilibrium takes place at a point where quantity demand is equal to quantity supply. So this is demand curve and supply curve. So this is demand, this is supply. Equilibrium takes place at E, where equilibrium price is P and equilibrium quantity is Q. And this equilibrium is highly volatile and keeps changing with the changes in demand and supply. For example, if demand increases, then demand curve will shift to the right, and demand curve will be now D1, and equilibrium will move from E to E1, where quantity will rise from Q to Q1 and price will rise from P to P1. And same is the case with decrease in demand. If demand decreases, demand curve will shift to the left, and this is because of change in non-price factors of demand like income, taste and trends, weather, population, etc. So new equilibrium is E2, where quantity will fall to Q2 and price will decrease to P2, right? So this is how changes in demand will shift like demand curve and change the equilibrium position. So now moving to the other graph where supply changes or shifts, and equilibrium is initially at E, where price is P and quantity is Q. And now if there is increase in demand, increase in supply, then supply curve will shift to the right from S to S1, and if there is decrease in supply, then supply shifts to the left. So increase in supply will shift supply curve from S to S1, and equilibrium will move from E to E1. Quantity will rise from Q to Q1 and price will fall from P to P1. Decrease in supply will shift supply curve to the left. New equilibrium is E2. This is E2, and price will increase to P2 and quantity will fall to Q2. And the non-price factors for supply I have already told you in the previous graph. Last graph that you must know in IGCSE and O levels is aggregate demand and aggregate supply curve and equilibrium in the macroeconomy. So aggregate demand curve is like negatively sloped like a normal demand curve. However, the labeling will be different. So on X now we show real GDP, and on Y we, instead of writing just price, we write price level or average price, right? So in micro we just write price, and on X we write quantity, but the labeling is changed in macroeconomics. So aggregate supply curve is positively sloped like this. So equilibrium takes place at E, where equilibrium price level is P. Now we will use word price level, and real GDP is Y. So instead of using quantity, we will use now Y, or like we use real GDP. And same is the case with shift in aggregate demand and aggregate supply curves. Like generally when aggregate demand increases, aggregate demand curve shifts to the right from AD to AD1. Equilibrium will move from E to E1, where price level will rise from P to P1 and real GDP will rise from Y to Y1. So rise in price level from P to P1 is demand pull inflation. And equilibrium may also change because of the change in aggregate supply as well. For example, if there is decrease in aggregate supply curve shifts to the left, and when aggregate supply curve shifts to the left, it causes cost push inflation in the economy. And equilibrium was initially E, new equilibrium is E1, where price increased from P to P1 and real GDP fell from Y to Y1. So it is cost push inflation, and we also call it stagflation. Because it is caused by stagnation in the economic activity. So price level increases and real GDP falls. It is called bad inflation because bad inflation increases price as well as decreases real GDP or economic activity and economic growth in the country. So these are the important graphs for O level and IGCSE economics. So I want all of you to quickly review all of them so that you make the perfect graphs if they come in the exam. So see you in the next video, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.